Dean and Tyler Listle are registered investment advisor representatives. Investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, and Secure Retirement Solutions, LLC are not affiliated companies.
It's time for Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. Now, here are your hosts, Dean and Tyler.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Tyler and I will discuss topics that affect your retirement, such as investments, income planning, Social Security, and much more. Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
Good morning, Dean. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Today we're going to talk about transitioning from your career to retirement. This is a big transition that a lot of financial firms really don't discuss in detail with their clients, but it's one of the basics that we like to cover with our clients. Part of the reason is most people are not prepared for this transition. You've just worked 20, 30, 40 years of your life accumulating money, not having to worry about health insurance because you're typically getting it through your employer, not even thinking about Social Security or the process and some of the options that are available, and not knowing how Medicare works. Well, those are some of the things you need to worry about transitioning. And additionally, how about your money? Is your money in the right place? Is it in an accumulation stage, which you typically have during your working years? And then do you need to convert it more to a preservation and income stage when you retire? So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I was quite shocked when I first got into this business when a lot of people said, okay, once I retire, how do I get money from my investments? I mean, people don't even really know the basic of taking systematic withdrawal. So we'll discuss those items. But the first thing we want to talk about in transitioning from your career to retirement is usually in your 50s, people start to think about retirement. You look in the mirror and you see you're a little bit older, and retirement is much closer than high school graduation is. So what's going on is in your 50s, you typically have your highest earning years in your 50s. You have typically paid off a substantial amount of debt, or at least we hope you do in your 50s instead of accumulating more debt. You want to start paying that off. But one of the things we really like to start planning on is Roth conversions. We will hear from a lot of people, should I start a Roth or should I convert my money to a Roth? Not thinking of which tax bracket they're going to be in once they retire, not thinking that they have to pay the taxes on the Roth conversion, and not knowing that if you make too much money, you still have an option called a backdoor Roth. But anyhow, we're going to talk about some of the basics in a Roth conversion. Tyler, let's take our listeners through some of the basics and why we really focus on Roth conversions when people are in their 50s.
Yeah, so as you said, Dean, the first thing when it comes to transitioning from your career to retirement, the first thing that we're going to touch on today is Roth conversions. Now, with the Roth conversion, what that does is it takes part or all of your traditional IRA and moves it into a Roth IRA. Now, many people have traditional IRAs, whether or not they started them off on their own, contributing in any particular year to take a tax deduction, or maybe they had a 401k or 403b or old retirement account that they had with an old employer and they rolled it over to a traditional IRA. Now, the traditional IRA is the pre-tax account. So you get a tax deduction up front, but then once you start taking the money out of a traditional IRA, everything is fully taxable. Now, when you convert it to a Roth IRA, you would pay taxes then on the amount that you converted. So really what you're doing is you're accelerating a tax liability from the future to today. So you're paying taxes on it now, but by doing that, no taxes is then, after you convert, no taxes is then owed on the amount that you converted, plus any of the earnings in the future after it's already in a Roth account. So really, this when you do a Roth conversion, it's an important step for people who are planning on retiring within the next five or so years. And part of that is looking at what your tax rate is now versus what it might be in the future. And right now, here in 2019, we are under the new tax reform law that was put in place in 2018, and it'll go till legislation puts it in place till about 2025. And obviously that can change. But at the same time, right now, believe it or not, tax rates are actually lower than what they've been for a number of years historically. and that probably won't last. Tax rates probably are only going to go one way, and that's going to be up. So right now, for many people, would be the perfect time to take advantage of converting some or all or part of their traditional IRA to a Roth account, because what you're doing is by you converting it, again, you're paying the taxes now when tax rates are lower, and then it'll be tax-free when you start taking the money out when tax rates are possibly higher. So again, that's something to look at right now. The one time where it wouldn't make sense is if you know that your income will be substantially lower in retirement than what it was during your working years. It's not going to make sense then, because if you're converting and paying taxes at a higher rate when you're going to withdraw at a lower rate, it wouldn't make any sense to do so. So again, right now, many people, they're in a lower tax bracket. It's probably going to make sense to convert some to a Roth account, and then later on, again down the road, once tax rates are higher, you can pull it out tax-free once it's in your Roth.
Okay, Tyler, you brought up a good point, and that is when it comes to the tax law now, tax rates are lower than they've been in a long time, as Tyler stated. Also, in addition to that, we don't like to time the market, and we're not advocating that. But what I am saying here next is when a portfolio is down, many times it is a better time to convert some of that money to a Roth, okay, go through a conversion. Why? First of all, we're at a time right now where tax rates are lower, so you're going to be paying less on the conversion from a tax standpoint. And if you were to take a $5,000 portfolio that went down to a $4,000 portfolio and you convert at a low, of course you're going to be converting more shares with the hope that the market will go up. So many times we tell people, there's light at the end of the tunnel here. When the market is down, it's a good time to convert.
Yeah, good point there, Dean. The other misconception that people have when it comes to doing a Roth conversion is they think you have to do all or nothing, which isn't the case. So, for example, someone might have $100,000 in a traditional IRA, and they think that you have to convert the whole thing to a Roth. And really doing so for many people wouldn't make too much sense, because if you were to convert all $100,000, that alone is going to bump you into a next tax bracket almost no matter where you are with your current income. But that might put you in the 22% tax bracket. So really, 22% on $100,000 is $22,000 in taxes, where instead of doing that, you could convert $10,000 per year over 5 or 10 years and still stay in a lower tax bracket like the 12% tax bracket. So really, partial Roth conversions are something to keep in mind. And what that does is that gives you tax diversification. So later on, you can pick and choose which account to withdraw from based on future tax rates. So if you keep some within your traditional IRA and convert a partial amount to the Roth, then you have two different accounts where you can choose from based on what tax rates are in the future, and you're going to be more diversified that way. So that's another thing that we like to do. And again, just be careful of converting too much in any given year. Some people are very anxious. They want to get money converted to a Roth account because they hear about how tax advantageous Roth accounts are, which is definitely true. But if you try and get too anxious, too excited about it, and want to convert too much too soon, you could have a very unwanted tax liability. So you always want to strategically make sure that you're converting an amount to the point where you're not going to get bumped into a new tax bracket. And if you do get bumped into a new tax bracket, you want to make sure that you have that cash sitting aside and checking or saving so you can pay the tax bill. So number one, when it comes to transitioning from your career to retirement, Roth conversions.
Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is as you transition from your career into retirement, we're going to look at health insurance, or COBRA. This is a big one. It has been for some years now. Under the Affordable Care Act, fortunately, there's no pre-existing condition. So if you were to retire prior to 65 years old, you're going to need health insurance. Many times people think, well, the first option is COBRA. COBRA is a continuation of your existing health insurance that your employer provided. Now, it doesn't mean that your contribution while you were working is going to be the same when you retire if you take the COBRA option. It can be higher. And in many times, it's much higher than if you went through the Affordable Care Act and picked up insurance, because it's based on income. So you need to really understand the health insurance side of the retirement process. Understand that health insurance isn't based on how many claims you might have. isn't based on a pre-existing condition you might have. It's based on income. So understand that. And again, many times in preparing for retirement, we will look at investments or retirement plans that people have and say, okay, can we do some conversions now to build up some Roth accounts that we just discussed, and or individual or non-qualified or non-retirement accounts? And the reason we do that is these accounts do not show up as income when you pull money from them, which is used to determine your insurance premium. So again, there are certain ways that you prepare for paying these insurance premiums. You want to have income streams that are not considered income when you're looking at your insurance premiums. So that's important to know. Also understand that COBRA lasts 18 months, okay, and that's all. So that means sometimes people will get COBRA, and then once COBRA is done, they have to get another insurance policy, usually through the Affordable Care Act, until they hit 65 years old. Then you no longer have to worry about watching your income from an insurance standpoint, because at 65 you qualify for Medicare. So Tyler, there's just sort of a view of the health insurance process from afar. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about it.
Yeah, Dean, good point. And again, like you said, right now this is a big one for many people retiring before 65 years old. And unfortunately for some people, they have to plan their retirement around this, where they might not even be able to retire until 65. When here they saved up, they have the money to do it, but they have these different trips planned, and their income isn't low enough to the point where they're going to get slammed at health insurance premiums. So really, they have to plan around it. So again, when you retire, you have to either go on to your spouse's health insurance plan through work, COBRA, as you mentioned, Dean, Medicare, or again onto the Affordable Care Act if you're retiring before 65 years old. And that's where, again, you have to play the income game. And as you said, Dean, on the Affordable Care Act, the premiums are based on income, and you can get different subsidies where your premiums can be relatively affordable if you keep your reportable income under certain limits. And now, right now, in 2019, if you're a single tax filer, you've got to keep your income below $48,560. So about $48,000. If you can keep it below that, then you should be able to get some subsidies to the point where you can plan around it. You can retire before 65 and have relatively affordable premiums. Now, if you're a married couple, then right now your income must stay below $65,840. So again, you're going to want to keep it below that $65,000 threshold to qualify for the different subsidies, to the point where your premiums probably can be planned around. And if you do want to retire before 65 years old, then you can go onto the Affordable Care Act and have premiums that are affordable. Now, again, if you go over those limits and if you don't qualify for different subsidies, then we've seen it oftentimes where the premiums might be, $1,000, $2,000, even up to $3,500 per month. So again, that was $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, or almost $4,000 a month in premiums, and that isn't going to sit well with many people when they're just going into retirement. That's a big expense in the form of health insurance. So you have to plan around that when it comes to transitioning from your career into retirement. And you have the main thing is going and knowing what your options are. You want to try and find out beforehand, because the last thing you want to do is retire, not plan your income correctly, and then you go onto the Affordable Care Act and you don't have access to these subsidies, and you might be paying $2,000 per month in premiums. And that's a good way to really blow up your whole retirement plan, spending that money before you're even Medicare age.
Right. And there's a couple other things. Unfortunately, many people who retire and either have to go back to work or, worse yet, file for bankruptcy in retirement, it's typically due to money running out too soon. That's where a financial plan really comes into play, puts you on a budget, makes you understand how much money you can spend on a monthly or annual basis, what you should be looking at for rates of return. If you're interested in having a financial plan done, give us a call, come and see us. We will do that complimentary. Anybody that comes into our office, we will prepare one for them, but it's very important. The other reason that unfortunately people run out of money or again, file for bankruptcy in retirement is healthcare costs. Healthcare costs are rising all the time. Make sure you understand the health insurance side of things between the time you retire and turn 65.
Yeah, Dean, good points there. Before we go on to the next one, which is Medicare, we're going to take a quick break.
You're listening to Dean and Tyler Listle, investment advisors with Secure Retirement Solutions located on Allied Street in Green Bay. For a complimentary review of your current investments, or if you have questions, please call them at 920-347-9888 or go to their website at srsplans.com.
Okay, now we'll talk about Medicare. We just discussed health insurance, and that's usually the process that people will have to take health insurance between the time they retire and hit 65 years old. Many times they have to watch their income because their health insurance premiums are based on income. Many times we have people that could take substantially more based on their financial plan from their investments as far as income, but they're a bit hamstrung because of their health insurance premiums. So once you hit 65 and go on to Medicare, you no longer have to worry about putting a stranglehold on your income streams. You don't have to worry about how much income you make because it's not dependent on how much you're going to pay in Medicare costs. Now, Medicare, the process itself, first understand Tyler and I do not work for the Medicare, the administration. What we do, though, is we know how the Medicare process works. We have to because it's a major part of your retirement planning. And the basics are basically Medicare Part A is the one that everybody thinks is free. Well, it's really been taken out of your payroll since you started working. And you apply for Medicare Part A 3 months prior to turning 65, the month of 65, or 3 months after. So it's a 7-month process. Then Medicare Part B goes in place when you no longer have group health. B goes in place, and that will take care of things such as your doctor visits. And Tyler's going to explain, okay, if you have Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B, which Part B comes out of your Social Security benefit, you do have to pay for that one. And if you're not retired and you still have Medicare Part B, what's going to happen then, and you're not drawing Social Security, it's going to be billed to you on a quarterly basis. So Tyler, there's sort of a look at Medicare. Let's talk about it a little bit more specifically.
Yeah, good point there, Dean. And again, Medicare is the federal government program that provides health care coverage for people 65 or older. But what we just went over there, Medicare Part A and Part B, again, Part A is the one that you don't have to pay anything for right now because it's been taken out of your payroll for all your working years. Part B is the part where it's taken out of your Social Security, or you're billed quarterly if you're not currently collecting Social Security. And those two alone cover about 80% of your healthcare costs relating to everything from hospital care, skilled nursing, your labs, surgeries, medical equipment, different things like that. And again, about 80% is what Medicare Part A and Part B cover. Now, there's that 20% gap, and that's where you have to fill it in with either a Medicare supplement in Part D or a Medicare Advantage plan. And what is best for you is all going to depend on your personal situation. There's some people that might benefit more from a Medicare supplement. There's other people who might benefit more from a Medicare Advantage plan. So really, you need to be educated before that process begins. And we have Luke, who's our Medicare agent in the office here, that he'd be more than happy to sit down with you and take you through the different options and try and find what's best for you. But really, Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage plan, that's what covers the other 20%. So remember, Part A and Part B are 80%. Medicare supplement and Advantage plan cover about 20%. And there's people that I've talked to, and they said, well, I can just get Medicare Part A and Part B and be fine. It's 20% really isn't much. Well, it might not be much for smaller things, but if you have a $100,000 surgery, then 20% is $20,000 out of pocket. And it wouldn't make too much sense doing that when you could have a Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage plan and pay, a little premium here and there, or a little copay here and there when you go to the doctor, or a premium of a couple $100s per month. It really wouldn't make sense to not have that and pay $20,000 out of pocket. So again, Part A and Part B, 80%, but then that other 20%, you need to make sure that you get either a supplement or Advantage plan to cover that. And you want to know what your Medicare options are before going on to Medicare, because many people, they get flooded with different mailings, letters, paperwork. And what we do is we bring them into the office here, sit down with Luke, and he simply explains the options, educates them, taking the sales process out of it and letting them know what would be best for them. And then you can go ahead and make a decision from there. So again, Medicare is very important when it comes to transitioning from your career to retirement. but it's a whole different ball game than when you were on your employer coverage. So you want to make sure that you're educated on that. You have a game plan with Medicare beforehand.
Okay, good points, Tyler. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is deals with your money. It's money matters and investments. And many times while you're working, you have methods to accumulate money, savings plans such as a 403B or a 401k or a 457. All of these numbers and letters are IRA codes for a for an employee-sponsored plan. So what happens in situations like this? You might have these investments in a 401k. It's a great way to save for retirement. We typically say that a 401k will get you to retirement, but we would many times look at an IRA to take you through retirement. So it's a process of rolling over a 401k or a 403b or a 457. Now, that's not always the case, though. Make sure when you're dealing with your financial advisor and you retire prior to 59 and a half years old, you have a conversation with your advisor and ask, okay, should I be rolling over my 401k or not? And if they say yes, understand that once your 401k is rolled over to an IRA and you are younger than 59 and a half years old, you cannot take money out of that account until 59 and a half, or you're going to be penalized by the IRS 10%, plus you'll have to take taxes out. So make sure that when you deal with your financial advisor, they understand that you might need money from that account and that you are younger than 59 and a half. So for instance, between the years of 55 and 59 and a half, there is one option to be able to take money from a 401k as long as it is kept in the original 401k at your employer while you are between the ages of 55 and 59 and a half if you need that money. Again, if it's rolled over, what's going to happen? You're going to have to pay 10% penalty if it goes into an IRA and you need that money. So you don't always need to roll over your money, but there are many options and a lot of positives to rolling it over. For instance, 401ks typically do not have a lot of options. Many times they're quite expensive with the internal fees. IRAs, you have hundreds of thousands of different options. You can actively manage them against potential market downturn. You have the ability to be much more nimble going into momentum-based investments. You typically have active management from an advisor who's just down the street versus many times your 401k advisor who could be in a different state. So there are some advantages to that. It prepares you a little bit better for that stage of retirement than a 401k does, which again is a good savings plan, but not necessarily a good distribution plan.
Yeah, so good points, Dean. As you said, the first thing to keep in mind when it comes to your 401k versus rolling it over to an IRA would be number one, you're not always going to want to automatically do it because, again, there's a little known rule, the age 55 rule for early withdrawals, as you mentioned, where if you do retire between the ages of 55 and 59 and a half, your 401k through work, if you leave it there, you can take early withdrawals if you want to retire early, whereas if you roll it over right away, then you can't do that until 59 and a half. So always keep that in mind. If you sit down with an advisor and you're planning on retiring between the ages of 55 and 59 and a half, be very aware if they recommend that you roll it over right away because that might not be in your best interest. So again, you're not always going to want to roll it over, but most times if you are over the age of 59 and a half and you're no longer working, then there are a few options to weigh. And if you do roll it over, you could potentially, number one, increase your investment options. So within a 401k, I've seen people have as little as 15 different funds, as little as 5 actually different funds to choose from. And you can go from 5 to over 5,000 by rolling it over to an IRA. So number one, it's going to give you more investment options, and that can help you actively risk manage, where if you have more investment options based on what the market's doing, you can go into different funds, you can go into different stocks, bonds, different places that will allow you to better manage your money based on the stock market, number one. Number two, you could potentially reduce fees. Now, not always, so you want to keep in mind what the investment vehicle is that you'll be rolling your money into. But oftentimes within a 401k, 403b, there's different layered fees. There's fund fees. There's fees that the company receives. They might have a third-party administrator who also helps them with the different 401k filings and paperwork that might receive a fee. So there's quite a few different hands in the cookie jar, so to speak, when it comes to your 401k. So different fees with that. Another thing you can do is you can consolidate old accounts. Many people might have 2, 3, 4, 5 different old 401ks, 403bs, retirement savings plans, profit sharing plans that are kind of lingering out there. By rolling them over into an IRA, you can consolidate them all in one spot, so that way you don't have all those loose ends out there. And the other thing is that you can have more withdrawal flexibility as well. So with many 401ks, they limit, or with some I should say, they limit your withdrawals, meaning if you leave it in there and you want to take money out, it's either all or nothing, where you have to take a full withdrawal or you can't do it at all unless you're going to take a full withdrawal. So at that point, it's going to make more sense to simply roll it over and then withdraw money on your terms. So again, 401k versus an IRA. Many people, when you transition from your career into retirement, you're going to want to roll it over. Your 401k, you're going to want to roll it over into an individual retirement account where you can, again, have more options, potentially lower fees, actively risk manage it, and just more flexibility overall.
Okay, as we close, we're going to talk about the last one, and that's how to set up an income stream. As I said earlier in the show, many people don't understand that once you have an investment, how does it pay out? Well, first of all, we're going to talk about fixed income. Your fixed income is that first bucket of money that we like to see people have in place, which is that safety bucket, your Social Security. You might have a pension that pays out on a monthly basis. You might have an annuity that pays out on a monthly basis. That's your income stream that is considered fixed income. If you have investments, how do you take your money from investments? We typically set it up much like you had for payroll. If you got paid every other week, we would have an income stream come from that investment right into your checking account the same way you had your payroll done. If you were paid monthly, we would set it up that way. If you find out that your fixed income, such as a pension, if you have one, or Social Security comes maybe the third Wednesday of the month, many times we'll set up the income stream coming from your investments at the first week or the second week of the month. So that's the basics. Any retirement plan should be able to be set up as an income stream. That is why you work 20, 30, or 40 years of your life, is to be able to take income from the investments when you get to that point.
Yeah, Dean, good point there. The only other thing that I want to mention when it comes to an income stream is that many times annuities are overlooked, but they can be used in place of a pension for many people who don't have pensions anymore. So ultimately, it's important to have a financial plan when you do transition from your working years into retirement, so you can set up that income stream from your investments, Social Security, and possibly a pension, because you're no longer going to have that income coming in through work. Now it's going to have to come in through your investment account. So you want to make sure that you do have that income stream set up heading into retirement, and that all starts by getting a financial plan put in place.
Okay, that's all the time we have this week. See you later, and hope you'll join us again next week.
We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. To get more information from Dean and Tyler, contact them at Secure Retirement Solutions on Allied Street in Green Bay. Call 920-347-9888 or visit them at srsplans.com. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services is not an affiliated company.